Greetings, members one and all of the Salivation Nation. The Silver Squeeze movement makes mainstream news. Let's explore. You know, it's always exciting whenever members of the community at large that talk about precious metals makes the news, especially mainstream news sources. We know that gold and silver and even parts of this community are covered by press that is close to us, such as Coin World. We saw that with Empire Precious Metals. There was a big article there that featured him and his channel. But also in terms of talking about on Kitco has covered parts of the aspects of the community as well. But when mainstream news takes a gander at the community, I think it's wonderful. And this particular community I'm talking about is Wall Street Silver. That's right, in specific, because that's kind of where the Silver Squeeze movement started. And we're going to take a look at an article that discusses Wall Street Silver and interviews its founder. But I will say that one reason why I'm a fan of Wall Street Silver is because I understand that it's not a monolithic movement. And I think that their mission statement there, I think, says it all. We are a community that loves silver, period. And I was actually interviewed by Wall Street Silver on their YouTube channel. And I disagree with some members of this community, and also I disagree with a lot with members of the YouTube Silver community as well. But that does not mean that that we should be enemies just because we have differing viewpoints on silver. Because hey, if you love silver, that's really what it's all about. And I think that I've been on here enough and I've read enough. I don't post a whole lot, but I might just post something right now. Let's see here. I am making a video about you at this exact moment in time. Thank you. All right, I don't know what else to say, but let's do it. Well, you know, very general. Oh, crap! I gotta contain some flair. Shows how often I don't do this. But anyways, let's see here. I don't even know where it would be here. I guess it's news, maybe. There we go. All right, very good. Let's see here. All right, let's see. Anyway, so there we go. All right, very good. So, what is this? Well, and actually, there's some posts on Wall Street Silver about this article here from Reuters. Just came out here today. Can Reddit silver apes beat the market? And that is the headline. And the article is actually fairly well done. We're going to go through it. But I think it does kind of categorize them. I think a lot of them, how this started, that was kind of their intention. But again, I will emphasize it's not a monolithic movement. And they actually interviewed and showed some pictures of this a fella nicknamed Troy on the Wall Street Silver Forum. And here, this is not his stack, by the way. This is some bars from a photo from, I guess, from Russian silver there, 1,000-ounce bars. This is the gentleman who is a part of the movement. And very, very cool, showing some of his silver that he bought. We'll look at and take a look at what he's talking about here for Kerry Craker. And maybe not pronouncing the name correctly, but he has worked in kitchens all of his life. Since March, he spent around $100 a week, which is half of his spare cash on silver coins. And I think that's important to distinguish here because Mr. Craker is being very smart about it. He's using his spare cash, and not all of his spare cash, by the way, too, on silver coins. He's a part of a growing social media movement who said they are buying bars and coins for protection from a coming age of inflation. And again, I think it's wise to do it, and I think he's taking the exact right approach to it. Thanks to a community of like-minded silver stackers, gathering on the social media platform Reddit, which is Seattle-based Craker, says he also feels empowered. It could be Cracker, but it's probably Craker. They are so encouraging and so convinced in the changes they can cause, Craker, who lost his home in the financial crisis. So he's seen it firsthand from the financial crisis, and he's taken a way to protect himself. Inspired by the Reddit forum Wall Street Bets, some of the 122,000 strong community hope to corner the market and bring down what they say is an unjust banking system. Market professionals say that is unlikely to succeed. There is plenty of silver, and I do actually agree with the market professionals on that, and central bankers in the United States and Europe expect inflation to stay low in the single digits. Now, there's where I disagree. I think we probably are on the precipice of growing inflation. I'm not going to say hyperinflation, but I think that even though we may see some of the supply chains and some of the rising prices due to COVID start to subside a bit, I think that inflation is going to continue, and it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. Bankers aren't getting through to this group. There's a bit of anger, like, screw the system. Now, I'm not directly quoting Mr. Craker there. I hope he understands. But if there is a back door to wealth, I might take that door because the front door is closed. And understandable so, because he got screwed out of the financial crisis for sure. So I can understand his attitude. The bankers and others have basically shut the door for everyone who is not themselves. The core of the movement is a Reddit community called Wall Street Silver, which was formed in January at the time. Wall Street Bets was marshaling an uprising of ordinary people against the financial elites through coordinated buying of company shares. Now, to me, that is a form of manipulation when you work together to affect the price of something. Reuters spoke to more than 20 members who call themselves silverbacks and apes, have a homepage featuring an image of an army of primates on the march from the Planet of Apes movie, and say things like ape like shiny. They organize raids, days in which everyone buys together. Here is that image, by the way, you see that they're referencing there. And here is the post here from Reddit. Share the movement. These banks and internationalists who will stop at nothing for greed and power will be thrown in the streets. The group's founder, Ivan Bioki, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right either, I just know him as Ivan, is a 24-year-old former car salesman living with his parents in Alberta, Canada. Now is the time to wake up and take the power back in the hands of the people, says one of his characteristic posts. Silver costs around $26 an ounce. Stackers think the price will rise as inflation erodes the values of currencies. Demand for silver rises and supplies run short. Some say that by buying up bars and coins, they can jack up prices by 100% or even 1,000% to the point where they can call the shots against the so-called bullion banks, the large financial institutions which lead trade in precious metals. And I think that's a fair assessment, because they are saying that only some that buying bars can say that they can jack up prices. Not everybody in that movement is making that claim, but I think this is where the some who do believe that, I think, are a bit misguided, and this is why I wasn't fully on board with the silver squeeze movement in general for that reason, mainly because I guess of my history of stacking and kind of the understanding of the markets for as long as I've been around. These kind of movements typically, though it's exciting to see a lot more people get on board with it, they can lead to set themselves up for disappointment and discourage them from buying in the future, with the understanding that probably this won't work in the way they think it will, because the silver market is a lot more complex than, well, the GameStop or AMC stock that they were able to short. And by the way, those have fluctuated like crazy since the beginning of that. A March post pictured silver coins laid out to spell a message to the head of J.P. Morgan Chase & Company, a U.S. investment bank which dominates the bullion trade. Kiss my ass, Jamie Dimon. JP Morgan declined to comment. We're going to see somewhat of a theme there with regards to JP Morgan. In fact, you've seen that on my channel where I've talked about JP Morgan in certain articles where they declined to comment. That's a common theme. They declined to comment. In a year or two, we will have millions of people in the movement, Aoki told Reuters, and then it will be over for the bullion banks. Now, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that statement either, but well, and for both, I don't know, we'll see. It'd be very interesting to see if they get that many. It has been a very fast-growing community. I've kind of been watching it, mostly from the sidelines. I talked about how it got over 20,000, and now it's growing up. So it's growing fairly fast. Let's see if it keeps going. But I don't think they can defeat the banks, the big bullion banks. Corner the market. Prices of silver and gold, which are traditionally seen as safe stores of wealth, have risen since 2019, and that should encourage all of us. Gold is up around 40% and silver up around 70% since then, especially now that we are on the back end of the coronavirus pandemic. The silver stackers are joining millions worldwide who believe currencies are vulnerable, a fear that has grown as governments borrowed and printed money in the pandemic. It scares me every day when the bomb will burst, says Tim Hack, a 23-year-old stacker in Germany. Silver and gold really have intrinsic physical value that you can even feel when you hold it in your hand. Amen. And that's exactly right. And that statement alone is precisely the fundamentals of why we hold the metal and why we stack it, and why I think that, and because we love silver and we love gold for its historical value over that long period of time, should be the main reason why we buy the metal, not to necessarily defeat anybody or to try to take down the big banks. Posters on Reddit joined the silver fray on January 27th when posts appeared on Wall Street Bets saying that if enough people bought the metal, they could push prices to the moon. Well, essentially, they have, and they did. And that really was with relation to premiums, because they did it at the exact time when when mines were still trying to recover from the coronavirus pandemic. And there was, at the time, since the pandemic started, there's been a shortage of silver product, not only refined silver products such as blanks and raw materials from which to make the bars and coins and rounds. And so therefore it caused the prices to increase fairly dramatically, where they were already high from demand from the coronavirus after prices dipped down pretty dramatically in March of 2020. There was a great demand for silver. It was exacerbated by this. But one of the members said corner the market. But that which happened back in 1980 with the Hunt brothers, and that's kind of the reference there, is thinking that all of the silver apes maybe could corner the market, is pretty much an impossibility. But nonetheless, they certainly did have an effect on the market. Adding to the impetus was an argument put forward on Reddit that big banks trade huge quantities of paper contracts for silver that they don't have in their possession, keeping prices lower than they should be. In some ways, that's correct. Contracts representing 800 million ounces of silver are active in the New York futures market alone, more than twice the amount the exchange says it's in its registered vaults, not all of which is available for delivery. Much of the silver that banks buy and sell in London, another big trading hub, is borrowed. Bankers and traders say that's right. And that's pretty much what we see in a lot of commodities too. If every professional who owns silver on paper called in their dues at once, there wouldn't be enough metal in hand. They agree. The system works because most people with contracts don't want the actual metal. I've been saying that for years, that these ETF buyers, they don't care about it. There's people that I know personally who don't collect precious metals at all, but who hedge with ETFs. They don't want the actual metal. They want the money, the cash, if they need to cash out. That's what happened in March 2020. People sold en masse, running to the safety of cash. There are speculators and miners and jewelers hedging their risk that actually do that. After the post on Wall Street Bets, around $3 billion rushed into a fund run by asset managers BlackRock that stores silver for investors. BlackRock said it added more than 100 million ounces of silver to its stockpile in 3 days. Silver's wholesale price jumped nearly 20%. The premium's even more. Much of the silver stored for BlackRock is in London. The LBMA, the London Bullion Market Association, later said that there had been concerns that London would run out of silver. Then we had that accounting error that I talked about before. And by the way, looking back on what this article didn't talk about, is many of the posts that were posted on Wall Street Bets were deleted. So that's part of the motivation for Ivan to create Wall Street Silver. BlackRock told Reuters it did not track where the money had come from. So they weren't going to admit that a lot of it came from the silver squeeze movement, and maybe even specifically Wall Street Silver. The Reddit group's founder, Bioki, said he watched with growing excitement, turned to his father and said, "Why don't I start a Wall Street Silver community?" Especially after some of those posts were deleted on the Wall Street Bets. There's also truth in Redditors' claims that big players can influence the silver market. One trader tactic is spoofing, sending out fake buys and sell orders to shift prices before completing the real trade. And by the way, that shift of prices can be both up and down. You remember I covered that extensively on my channel. In 2020, JP Morgan paid $920 million to U.S. authorities to settle charges that its staff sent hundreds of thousands of fake orders into precious metals and treasury markets. And the bank said that at the time that the people responsible had left and it had improved its compliance systems, it declined further to comment for this story. Again, there's that running trend. They declined to comment. But the impact of spoofing lasts only seconds or minutes, said Ross Norman, a London-based former precious metals trader. That's right. And again, it affects the movement up and down. That's spoofing. Whereas, the claim of what I refer to as macro manipulation, or it's just price suppression, which is a cabal between the different banks to keep the price of silver down. It's a lot tougher to find evidence of that. The January squeeze lasted 3 days. Then Wall Street Bets returned its focus to stock markets. Silver calmed. Since early February, the price of silver has fallen by $1. Now that's Wall Street Bets, what they did. So it's jumping around a little bit. The squeeze movement started with Wall Street Bets, but really it was Wall Street Silver Reddit community that took it to another level. Undeterred, Wall Street Silver issues a deluge of tips, analysis, memes, photos, and encouragement. It is only Reddit's 3,783rd biggest community, but it is frequently in the top 20 for volume of posts per day. Very active. When a new member posts, Bioki often responds saying, "You are now family forever." I have to look and see if he posted that on my first post. It'll be very interesting to see. I hope I'm still family. It's some place where families have some disagreements. But overall, I agree with I'm bullish and I support movements that bring more people into the fold. But I always say for people coming into the fold that they need to do their due diligence. And there is a due diligence, portion of that forum, which I think is great. Reddit buyers sit at the end of the fat silver pipeline. Only about a quarter of the 1 billion ounces or so that are produced each year is used to manufacture the bars and coins that most of them are buying. It's only 1/4. You've heard me talk about that before too. Most of the rest is used for jewelry and in industrial applications. Michael Messerich, who runs the world's largest gold and silver refiner, Valcambi, in Switzerland, says that the 1,000-ounce bars of silver used in the wholesale market are plentiful. For small investors who think they can corner the market is entirely wrong. They can engineer a squeeze on products, he said, but silver in total, they'll have a hell of a time. That's true. And he would know for sure. Investors will stockpile a lot of silver this year, but less than in 2020, according to consultants Metals Focus. Demand in the West is strong, but in India, one of the biggest silver-consuming countries, the pandemic is reducing people's ability to buy, they say. Funds like BlackRock stockpiled 331 million ounces, the most ever. In 2020, Metals Focus said in a report for the Silver Institute, bar and coin buyers took home 200 million ounces more. This year, the consultancy expects funds to hoard 150 million ounces, the second highest level ever, and bar and coin buyers 253 million ounces. Silver coins and bars certainly hold their value. Higher inflation should lift prices, as will rising demand from makers of goods like electronics and solar panels, said Rona O'Connell, an analyst at traders for broker StoneX. But she and others at companies that trade the metal think predictions of $1,000 an ounce are out of this world. I agree with her. Of 39 analysts and traders polled by Reuters in April, only 7 thought silver prices would average $30 or more in 2022. The highest average that they forecast is 44, and I tend to fall in line with the lower end of that spectrum. I stand by my original prediction for this year, about between 30 and 35. It will touch upon those numbers this year, but we'll see. Redditors are unmoved. Craker, the restaurant worker, has begun reading obsessively about inflation, money supply, and other economic data. There is a monster around the corner, he said. I'm trying to sharpen my stick. There you go. All right, and I agree with him. I think it's good to protect yourself, and that is really why we should stack. And you stack to hold. And I've talked to some silver apes over there on the forum, and I basically said, hey, make sure you buy for the long haul. It's a long-term proposition, and they say we'll never sell. A lot of them were like, we're never going to sell. We're going to hold for life, maybe even making it a multi-generational proposition. In other words, passed down to your kids. And we'll see. So there you go. Hello to everybody on the Wall Street Silver Forum. We have certainly different opinions and views. And look, I'm already getting some comments. A short bank movie. There we go. All right, very good. And so there we go. So nonetheless, there we are, and we'll see how this plays out in the end. But I think it's exciting to see Wall Street Silver and silver in general make the news on Reuters. And so we'll see here, see how it plays out. So I'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude to you all for taking the time to watch this video, and encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe. And if you haven't, even if you don't agree with the Wall Street Silver movement, again, it's not a monolithic movement, but join the conversation, I would say. I know I have, and I think it's great when anybody comes new into the world of stacking precious metals. A multitude of gratitude to you all.